In the icy waters of the Antarctic Ocean, 28 men set out on a daring journey. Their ship, built strong but not invincible, soon became trapped in millions of tons of drifting ice. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and before they realized, more than 7 months had passed while the vessel remained frozen in place. Then, one night, the silence of the frozen ocean was shattered. From beneath the ship came a thunderous crack, and the vessel tilted sharply to one side. It felt as if some giant force had struck it from below. Fear spread through the crew, and none could imagine what awaited them next. Welcome once again to Deep Story Hub. Today we bring you one of the greatest tales of survival ever told. The story of Sir Ernest Shackleton and his crew, who faced death in the most unforgiving ocean on Earth and lived to tell the tale. The Antarctic Ocean is unlike any other place on the planet. The waves rise as tall as buildings, the winds can roar at more than 100 kilometers per hour, and the water is so bitterly cold that human blood itself can freeze within minutes. To sail into these waters is to embrace death itself. The icebergs alone, towering like mountains, can crush even the strongest steel vessels with ease.
Now, imagine venturing into this realm more than 100 years ago, when technology was primitive, ships were weaker, and survival depended entirely on human grit and determination. In 1914, Sir Ernest Shackleton, an explorer driven by an unstoppable desire to test the limits of human endurance, set out on an expedition so bold that history still remembers it as the greatest survival story of all time. This was not Shackleton's first attempt at conquering the Antarctic. In 1901, he joined a mission, but was forced to turn back 750 kilometers before the pole. In 1907, he tried again, only to retreat just 150 kilometers from his goal. But Shackleton was not a man who accepted defeat. In 1914, he returned with a plan more ambitious than ever before. Not only to reach Antarctica, but to cross the entire frozen continent on foot, a feat no human had ever achieved. The mission was officially named the Imperial Trans-Antarctic Expedition, and it would require extraordinary courage. Recruiting a crew for such a journey was no easy task. Shackleton placed a now legendary advertisement in the newspapers. It read, "Men wanted for hazardous journey, low wages, bitter cold, long months of complete darkness, constant danger, safe return, doubtful, honor and recognition in case of success. Only true adventurers would answer such a call." Soon, 27 brave men joined Shackleton. Together, they prepared for what would become a test, not of conquest, but of survival. For this mission, Shackleton purchased a powerful ship constructed from thick oak wood, specially designed to resist the crushing force of polar ice. He named it Endurance. On August 8, 1914, as the world descended into the chaos of World War I, Shackleton and his crew set sail from England, determined to make history. Their journey first took them across the Atlantic, then to Argentina, and finally to the island of South Georgia for final preparations. On December 5, 1914, they pointed the Endurance southward into the treacherous Weddell Sea, carrying not only their supplies, but also 50 large sled dogs trained to pull their equipment across the Antarctic. For 46 days, they battled their way through the ice, drawing ever closer to their goal. But on January 18, 1915, disaster struck. Sheets of sea ice grew thicker and thicker until they were 18 feet deep. Endurance, despite all her strength, could go no further. Just 130 kilometers short of landfall, she was trapped. At first, Shackleton and his men believed the ice would break apart soon. They tried for weeks to free the ship, cutting away at the frozen sheets and pushing with all their might. Exhausted and frozen, after weeks of effort, they had managed to move the ship only a few hundred meters. Finally, Shackleton ordered that they would let the ship drift with the ice, hoping that nature itself would set them free.
Months passed. The Endurance became their home, locked in a prison of ice. The men kept up their spirits with discipline, playing soccer on the frozen sea, cutting each other's hair, and holding discussions to keep their minds sharp. They formed bonds with each other, and even with the dogs. Shackleton knew that keeping morale alive was as important as keeping them fed. But nature was merciless. By April 1915, the shifting ice began to crush the Endurance. The ship groaned and twisted under the pressure. Its rudder broke. By July, the hull began to splinter. Then, in October 1915, the ice dealt the final blow. Shackleton gave the order to abandon ship. The men took what supplies they could, set up tents on the frozen sea, and watched helplessly as the Endurance was slowly destroyed and swallowed by the ocean. Now, they were stranded on drifting ice, more than 2,000 kilometers from civilization, with no hope of rescue. Shackleton knew that their survival depended on bold decisions. He ordered the men to march across the ice, dragging lifeboats with them in search of land. For months they endured storms, hunger, and bitter cold. They hunted seals and penguins to survive, rationing even a single biscuit for a day. By April 1916, more than a year since they had set sail, they finally reached the desolate shores of Elephant Island for the first time in 16 months. They stood on solid ground, but Elephant Island was barren, windswept, and offered no real chance of rescue. Shackleton realized that if they remained there, they would eventually starve.
He made a daring decision. He and a small crew of 6 men would take one of the lifeboats and sail 1,300 kilometers across the most dangerous seas in the world to South Georgia Island, where a whaling station might provide rescue. On April 24, 1916, they set off. The journey was a nightmare of towering 90-foot waves, freezing spray, and relentless winds. Their small boat was tossed like a toy in the vast ocean. They navigated not with modern instruments, but with the stars, the sun, and sheer determination. After 16 grueling days, they reached South Georgia Island, but on the wrong side. Towering mountains blocked their path to the station. Exhausted beyond measure, Shackleton and his men climbed those 400-foot peaks without proper gear, marching for 36 continuous hours, until at last, they stumbled into the whaling station. The workers there were stunned to see them alive. These half-starved, frostbitten figures who had been given up for dead. But Shackleton's journey was not yet over. 22 men still waited on Elephant Island. Over the following months, he made several desperate attempts to return, blocked each time by sea ice. Finally, on August 30, 1916, Shackleton spotted smoke rising from the island, the signal of his waiting crew. Miraculously, every single one of the 28 men had survived. After 2 years and 22 days, Shackleton had kept his promise. Not one life was lost. Though Shackleton never completed his dream of crossing Antarctica, his leadership, courage, and humanity ensured that his story became greater than any conquest. It became the ultimate example of survival against impossible odds. More than a century later, in 2022, researchers discovered the wreck of the Endurance deep beneath the Antarctic Ocean, astonishingly well preserved at a depth of 3,000 meters. The name Endurance could still be read clearly on her hull, a silent monument to one of the most extraordinary survival stories in human history. This was the tale of Sir Ernest Shackleton and his men, brought to you by Deep Story Hub. If you found this story inspiring, don't forget to like, share, and leave your thoughts in the comments. And as always, we'll see you in the next incredible story.